Basically, all that 1,000 pounds of salt inside that float tank creates this extremely buoyant saltwater solution that you could literally take a bowling ball, put it in the water, and it would easily float to the top like a cork.
Max Casa, he's a martial artist, he's an instructor, he's a biohacker, he's a performance coach, and he's an expert on float therapy.
When you're inside that tank, it's totally void of all external sensory stimulation coming into the brain altogether.
Welcome back to the Kwik Brain podcast. I am your host and your brain coach, Jim Kwik, and we have a unique episode. I'm really excited about sharing one of my practices that I haven't ever shared before in a podcast in over a few hundred episodes or even our books. And I want to thank everybody for ordering and sharing our brand new book, Limitless Expanded. This is recently updated with brand new chapters for a post-pandemic and the AI world. I hope you enjoy that. You can find out more at limitlessbook.com. The topic we're going to talk about today is we're going to go deep in this area of accelerated learning. And we're going to talk about the power of silence, solitude. We're going to talk about speed learning and a superior mind. And we're going to delve into the uncharted depths of float therapy. And we'll go through this, and most people have access in most major cities. It's something that I've been excited about, and it's part of my practice for over a decade and a half. And we have a good friend on with us today. His name is Max Casa. He's a martial artist. He's an instructor. He's a biohacker. He's a performance coach. He is founder of Vitality Floats, and he's an expert on float therapy. Max, buddy, we've been talking about this for a while. Thanks for being on the show.
Yeah, pleasure to be here, man. Thanks for having me on.
Yeah. And so we're going to talk about float therapy. Why don't we start, for people who are listening and they might put some images in their mind, why don't we briefly explain what float therapy is?
Yeah, so float therapy, or sensory deprivation, as also known, is a powerful form of therapy that usually involves getting in a big egg-shaped hot tub type tank, usually with the lid over the top. But if you got a chance to look at our site at all, we have totally open float tanks as well, which look more like an open hot tub, which is great for anxious and claustrophobic people. But really, floating involves getting in that tank, and inside that tank is 10 inches of water. But as you know, those 10 inches of water are extremely super saturated with over 1,000 pounds of therapeutic grade magnesium salts, commonly Epsom salts. And Epsom salts has many benefits, as we've known for hundreds of years at this point. But basically, all that 1,000 pounds of salt inside that float tank creates this extremely buoyant saltwater solution. So buoyant that you could literally take a bowling ball, put it in the water, and it would easily float to the top like a cork. So the float tank enables effortless floating, but it isn't just the 1,000 pounds of magnesium salts in the tank that make it so unique, because when you're inside that tank, it's totally void of all external sensory stimulation coming into the brain altogether, which means that when you're in that tank, there's no light coming in. Not even a single photon of light is entering the user's experience at all. There's no sounds coming into the user's experience because the user's wearing earplugs, and the tank itself is actually sound resistant. And there's no smells, there's no taste, there's no movement, there's no speech inside the tank. And there isn't even a sensation of touch inside the tank, which is fascinating because the saltwater solution and the air inside the tank is precisely heated and kept at a constant 94.5 degrees Fahrenheit, which is the same exact temperature as the external layer of your skin. So it becomes skin receptor neutral, and that can lead to profound, because really what happens is the user's brain loses sensation of where their body ends and where the water begins in a well-calibrated tank. And that can lead to profound spiritual or life-changing experiences inside the tank. But ultimately, floating is a form of therapy. Involves getting inside the tank, laying back, flicking the lights off, and floating in the silent darkness.
You know, I've been using it for, as I mentioned, for a decade and a half, for everything from helps me to relieve stress and anxiety. It helps stimulate my creativity. We're going to talk about accelerated learning. It's helped deepen my meditation practices. It's helped me with some chronic pain. I know I have friends who float also, that they're athletes and they use it for for incredible recovery, to be able to bounce back and bounce forward. It increases introspection, and built that awareness. And, some people say it suggests it accelerates healing and could, boost your immune system because it lowers the stress, improves circulation, all these different benefits. Yeah. So I wanted to have this conversation with you to introduce this concept to our community as another tool for people, something that's so simple. It could be either passive or it could be active. Now, maybe you could just go briefly into, before we go into the process of this, maybe you could go into what inspired you to be an expert in this field.
It really started when I was super young. And when I was born, actually, I was diagnosed with a degenerative neuromuscular disease at birth called Charcot-Marie-Tooth, or CMT for short. And I started seeing, like, I was having trouble walking and my balance was off and my coordination and all the rest of it. So my parents were looking for different forms of therapies to get me in, to help with that process and help cope and help with the healing. So they ended up getting me into martial arts at a super young age, which is really great and really awesome, and super grateful they did that. And really just as I got older and started teaching and competing in the martial arts more, I was just constantly looking for ways to optimize my mind and body and really dial things in, like a lot of your listeners, I'm sure. And I started exploring different modalities and different therapies. And really, I kind of went on a quest, I guess you could say, exploring many of the high-end Western world technologies that a lot of your listeners are into, and South American shamanic brews and Eastern medicines and just about everything in between. But for my first float, I went in when I was about 16, 17 years old for my first float session. And it was really just something resonated so deep inside of me, because it was the first form of therapy that I had found that was, one, easily accessible, didn't involve taking anything or drinking any brews or anything like that. And it really linked together really beautifully the physical and mental recovery, which I was really craving for my martial arts career at the time, and the spiritual piece as well, which a part of me definitely had a yearning to dive deeper into at that point in my life. So yeah, it was great, man. And then I started diving deeper into the benefits of it and started getting more and more hooked and floating more often. And ultimately it got so inspired that I started up my company, Max Vitality, where we now distribute our Vitality float tanks and our Vitality salts and all the rest of it, man.
All right, so let's delve into some of the science. A lot of our listeners are science geeks. How would you say float therapy impacts brain health, cognitive health, function?
Yeah, so there's so many ways that it impacts the brain, as you're aware, but really there's three main pillars of benefits that sums this up really nice. One is all the benefits we're getting from the zero gravity environment, because when you're inside the tank, it's totally unlike a bed or a mattress at the end of the night where there's thousands of springs and pain points cutting off your microcirculation. Because when you're in a true zero gravity environment, like the float tank, your blood vasculature can totally relax and your capillaries can totally vasodilate. So what we see is this huge surge and increase in things like blood flow and oxygen flow and microcirculation to all parts of the body. But not just that, all parts of the brain as well, which is really important for a lot of neurological conditions and brain functions. Second, we get all the benefits from the sensory deprivation. And when we're in the sensory deprivation, what happens is it's really the first time in the user's entire life, oftentimes, where they're not being bombarded with all this external sensory stimulation to the brain.
Yeah, and the delirious effects that could come from billions of input, in terms of stimulation, to be able to turn that off is, it's such a sanctuary. It's kind of the place that I go to be able to remove, as you mentioned, when I'm lying there, I can't see anything, I can't hear anything, I can't, my somatic aware, I can't feel anything because of that weightlessness and the temperature match. And when I come out, not only am I rejuvenated and refreshed and I sleep really well, but I'm incredibly creative also. We could talk in a moment about the mechanisms and the brainwave states of mind.
Yeah, definitely. And I'm glad you said that too, because one of the things that comes up with that sensory deprivation is our brain. One, we see a lot a lot of neural connections being made. Neuroplasticity starts shooting up. What we see is the left and right hemispheres of the brain, which typically operate more interdependently. When we're in sensory deprivation, there's no more distractions and feedback, and they can really focus, and they begin to harmonize and synergize and begin to vibrate in unison. And what we see as a result of this is things like experiences like the flow state, or ultimately heightened states of consciousness and awareness, when the left and right hemispheres of the brain can really come into coherence there, which is really, really interesting. And then really the third main pillar of benefits there is all the benefits of the magnesium. Because when you're in this float tank, again, it's 1,000 pounds of magnesium salts. When you're in that tank, you're actually soaking up magnesium transdermally through the hair follicles of your skin during the entirety of every float session. And again, like, it's not just that you're soaking up through your skin. A lot of people don't realize you're also breathing this stuff in. You're also soaking it up through the mucous membranes in your backside as well. So the float tank's really like a magnesium bomb, I guess you could say. And magnesium has many thousands of benefits on brain function, neurological function, and
hormones.
Yeah, hormones.
Amazing. So when we're talking about, let's go into brainwaves. Have they ever done any kind of diagnostic when somebody's in a float tank to see what brainwave states or their brain activity?
Yeah, they've been hooked up to EEGs, and what we see is when people go into the float tank, their brainwaves are shifting oftentimes from beta to the alpha brainwaves, and even dropping into deep delta and even theta brainwaves at times, because it's really like being in the tank. It's kind of like a cheat to meditation, so all the similar brainwaves you'd be able to see people getting to in deep states of meditation with many thousands of hours of meditation practice. Oftentimes people are able to drop into just by going to the float tank, because they don't have to focus or try as hard to cut out all that external stimulation. The tank does a really good job at cutting all the feedback out for you, which is great.
So you have that triune, the 0G, right? And I've had the opportunity to go on these 0G flights, but they're extremely costly, not very practical, and you're only getting a kind of like these little hits of being weightless. You have the sensory, deprivation, because protection against all this stimulus, from what you could see, what you could hear, EMFs, all those things, and then you have the benefits of all the magnesium for your physiology, for your physical and your mental health. We talked about brainwave states and the mental health benefits of just that relaxation, that recovery, those meditative states. So that's like passive, right? So where you can kind of go in there, lie in there, don't have to think about anything. And, it maybe takes a handful of minutes for us to think like, hey, I'm here, to kind of transition from going that beta awake, that sympathetic kind of state to more that parasympathetic rest and digest. But there's an active way. It's interesting with your unit that I purchased. It's interesting because now I'm experimenting with it, because it has an light component and an audio component. And I noticed that I could even use it as part of my accelerated learning practice, right? Everything around quick learning is, how do you read faster? How do you remember better? How do you focus better? And so when I'm in there, I could listen to my new Calm, which I've talked about, one of my favorite sound apps, or I could do self-hypnosis or hypnosis tracks. And, have they done any research or some studies doing that? I know there's mention somewhere of Navy SEALs using this as part of their repertoire.
Yeah, the whole world of active floats. So again, as you said, passive floats would be kind of just going into the silent darkness and setting your intention to just surrender to the medicine that is the silent darkness, and anything that comes up, you just allow it and have that experience that way. In the silent darkness is the key. And then active floats you touched on, because now maybe people are leveraging those powerful underwater sound transducers that we have installed in the sides of our Vitality pods. And like on the back of your tank, there's that aux cord that comes out. Just plug that phone into the aux cord. Then you can select any powerful frequencies or guided meditations. Like you said, hypnosis. We've actually been working with a good amount of hypnosis centers, because hypnosis has been shown to be over 5 times more effective when it's done in sensory deprivation versus when it's done outside of the float tank. So it's really powerful, just because those sublingual messages can go right into the subconscious psyche without your awareness getting yanked around by all the other stimulation coming in. But I know you'd mentioned the Navy SEALs, accelerated learning. What they've been doing is they've been using the float tank as an accelerated learning environment for many things, but one of the ones they talk more openly about is their ability to speed learn languages. And what they found is they were able to increase the speed of their learning and cut it down. Before, it was taking 6 months for them to learn a language, and they've been able to cut that down just to 6 weeks. So they literally saw a 75% increase in the speed of their learning just by doing it inside the float tank.
That's outstanding. I think a lot of people who are listening, they want to be able to have these benefits. I mean, who wouldn't want to be able to learn more, more quickly, all that, besides all the mental and physical benefits that come from this. How might somebody integrate float therapy into a routine to boost, their creativity or their performance?
So again, really just depends on what they're looking to get out of it. Again, we have some people that are coming in dealing with physical ailments, maybe a broken ankle or concussion or hurt back or something like that. And for those types of things, I always recommend floating as many times as they can in those first 2 weeks to really reduce the inflammation, accelerate the healing. But for a lot of neurological functions, again, it depends what aspect. If they're looking to quiet the mind, if they're looking to help dim out the amygdala a little bit, if they're dealing with any anxiety or stress or anything like that, there's really good research showing that the short-term anti-anxiety effects of a single float session last anywhere from 24 to 72 hours after a single 1-hour float session. So that means people are going into a float tank and they're seeing incredible anti-anxiety benefits. We're seeing 24 to 72 hours after a single float, which is really, really incredible, man. So again, anywhere from a couple times a week to a couple times a month can be really effective for improving brain function and brain health.
Hi, this is Jim Kwik, author of the New York Times and Wall Street Journal bestseller Limitless, and today I am thrilled to share with you some exciting news. It is Limitless Expanded. It's an updated and brand new edition of my transformative guide, and now it's enriched with new insights and new tools to help you navigate our post-pandemic world. For a limited time, when you pre-order your copy of Limitless Expanded, you're going to get exclusive free access to my 13-day Quick Start 2.0 training. It's a brain training plus a bunch of amazing bonuses. Just go to limitlessbook.com and pick up a copy for you and pick up a copy for a friend. And are you seeing, is it a minimum amount of sessions? Or whenever I introduce people, I always try to get them to do, 3 or 4, because sometimes maybe the first time is so novel and, their mind is just thinking about just the experience itself, not surrendering to the process. But do you see a certain amount of sessions needed for some of these benefits?
Yeah, I think you're right on with that. The 3 or 4 sessions right off the bat, because again, that first experience is kind of learning the experience, seeing what it's all about, your nervous system, just making sure your brain, parts of your brain and your mind, making sure you're all safe in there. Nothing's gonna pop out at you or anything like that, But yeah, so usually we recommend 3 floats within the first month or so. And what you start to see is maybe that first float session, maybe it takes you 45 minutes of the 60-minute session to really drop in and relax and tap into that deep, peaceful, calm state. But then what we see is the second time you pop into the tank, it's only taking 25, 30 minutes. By the third time you're popping in there, you're able to drop into that peace and relaxation maybe in 5 or 10 minutes and start reaping more of those nourishing parasympathetic benefits, which have so many beautiful benefits on the brain health and reducing neural inflammation and cortisol levels, etc.
It's so important, for me, I'm going full on cognitively like most people, but, sometimes it's so important to disconnect, to be able to reconnect with ourselves, and just, so for me, it's a big mood booster. It just gets me back to center, meaning you kind of shut off all the environment and I could go inward. And that introspection for me has been very valuable. I find that, I don't know what your practice is, but afterwards I like to journal. And I find that, I have ideas that weren't there before. Things look different. I see things different, maybe because I didn't hear anything or see anything or, feel anything external for, and I'm generally in there from 45 minutes to 60 minutes, to be able to get my effect. I think it's such a reprieve, and most cities have a spa where they have these services.
Yeah, we start to see. I mean, the form of therapy is really caught like wildfire, especially in Australia and Europe, and came from the West Coast over in the States. It's been really cool. Yeah. So I mean, a lot of different health and wellness centers. If you just pop on Google and you type in float center near me, usually get some good bings than 10, 50 miles, something like that. But no, that's really great. I'm happy to hear all the benefits you're reaping from it as well.
There's times where I'm so relaxed that I'll actually sleep sometimes. Do you ever find yourself kind of dozing off while you're in there?
Yeah. No, sometimes again, as you're shifting in, as your brain's shifting into these other brain waves and other brain states, which are in between waking and sleeping states. Yeah, it's not uncommon for people to fall asleep in there, and if that's the medicine that your nervous system and your brain was craving, you'll get that. And
I'll often travel to a city and I'll have to do a presentation the next morning, and I'll find a center to be able to do my float, the night before, and it's night and day, different kinds of experience. I'm an advisor for the largest franchise of float, True Rest. I don't know if you're familiar with them. They have like 50 or so in the States, centers, but it's more. I'm glad to see, this offering being available for more people. It's a little bit of an investment. Not everybody could get their own tank. I know they could certainly go to your website, and I want to thank you because before we started recording, you offered a discount for all of our listeners. And people could go to maxvitality.co, maxvitality.co. And when they use the code Kwik, you're actually going to save $2,500 off of a tank, which I think is incredibly generous. So thank you for making that available. I wanted to talk about the magnesium. One of the things our family loves, and we've gifted this out too, are these vitality salts. And I don't want to turn this into a commercial, but people ask me all the time for tools and resources, the things that I incorporate, for myself and for my clients. So what's different about this magnesium salts than like traditional, I don't know, Epsom salts I could get at a pharmacy or something like that?
yeah, man. Well, I'm happy to hear you've been enjoying the salts.
Yeah, I mean, this is something that we could do. Our family does, even just creating the magnesium bath before. Even if you don't have a float tank, you could put some of these salts. Or the other day we put some warm water into like a little portable like bucket tub, and I just sticking my feet in there even for 45 minutes when I was reading and journaling. I felt completely relaxed. But what's so special about your salts?
Yeah, one, a lot of people have heard of, because really that pillar of benefits we talked about, the magnesium getting soaked up through the skin. I guess that's really the pillar of benefits that's captured my heart, I guess you could say, these past few years, because there's so many beautiful benefits of magnesium. When it comes to magnesium, a lot of people run, again, whole food sources of a lot of these vitamins and minerals are great, but the issue is our magnesium rich foods only have as much magnesium as the soils that they're grown in. And unfortunately, a lot of our soil has been stripped due to things like factory farming and the fertilizer, etc. And a lot of the oral mag supplements, although they're great as well, a lot of them are just highly processed and mildly toxic and destroyed by the GI tract. And not just that, a lot of times they've been shown to take over 9 to 12 months to really start to increase our magnesium levels in the body. So magnesium, so important for neurological function, and transdermal forms of magnesium, or magnesium absorbed through the skin, is the most rapid and effective way to get into the body because it's absorbed directly into the bloodstream, and we start reaping those benefits instantaneously. So a lot of people, when they're diving into transdermal forms, they go into they look for Epsom salts. A lot of us have heard of the benefits of Epsom salt soaks. But what's cool is magnesium chloride, like you see in that blend, has over 230% more magnesium than Epsom salt. So even if someone's listening at home, not that they have to run out and buy the salts or anything, but even just swapping the Epsom salt for magnesium chloride, and you'll start feeling a lot more relaxed. The mind will get a little bit quieter and one-pointed, be sleeping better at night, which is great. And the other main thing with those salts is magnesium has 3 powerful cofactors, which if we really want to increase our magnesium levels is pretty important. We know about. We have vitamin B6, which helps get the magnesium deeper into the cells. Bicarbonate, which helps get the magnesium deeper into the mitochondria, where our body can use that magnesium to create ATP energy, which is the primary fuel source for our brain cells and just about every biological function. And then boron, which helps our body actually hold on to that magnesium longer and more effectively. So basically, in that salt blend, Vitality Salts, it has the purest magnesium chloride with magnesium's powerful cofactors. We always use it topically, whether it's in the float tank or a bath or a foot soaks are great. That's why I'm in one right now, because you got the largest pores in the body in the bottom of the feet and the nerve endings to every major organ in the body. So like I said, I love it. Love how you're doing it while you read. I love doing it while I'm reading, journaling, gratitude practice at the end of the night. Throw the feet in there and start soaking up the mag right away.
Our listeners could get their Vitality Salts also at maxvitality.co and use the code Kwik, and you're also going to get a generous discount also on that. So thank you for making that possible with our community. So I think some people are just interested. They want to maybe try their first float, for the first time. What recommendations would you have for that person listening?
For one, a lot of us, as you pointed out, a lot of us go into these floats or new experiences with expectations. So one, just when you walk into the float center, leaving that at the door. And two, just making sure morning of, we stand clear of caffeine, recommend keeping the caffeine away so we're not jittery and we can really relax more deeply in there. Ideally not shaving the night before or the morning of or anything like that, because again, that's such a saline concentrated environment. So if there's any cuts or scrapes or anything like that, it can give you a good sting and you'll have a good run-in with the pain teacher. So usually if you got any scrapes, just putting the Vaseline on it ahead of time. Usually the float center will have that right outside the tank. And then when you go in for that first float, again, some people maybe they're anxious or claustrophobic, or they say, hey, I could never get in one of those things because I could never be alone with just my thoughts for so long. We hear some people say, but that's really the point of this practice. You go in there, you shut the lid, and if that's too much for you for your first sesh, no pressure on it. We just like to lower the barrier to entry. So maybe you go in for your first float, you keep the lights on in the room, you keep the lights on in the tank, and you keep the lid open. Just there's nothing keeping you in there. Maybe you stay in there for 5 minutes for that first float. Whatever you can handle for that first sesh, just listen to your body, and then we'll gradually build up from there until eventually we're in the silent darkness, so we can sit in there and surrender to it and just allow whatever comes through to come through. But yeah, a lot of times when I'm in there now, I'm just working on practices to quiet my mind. Because again, all day, usually my mind's running around, lead me around. But when I can take my power back and allow my mind to just quiet, rest, it's really cool. Is give it the permission to say, hey, because all day we're giving our mind tasks to do, and it will gladly do them. But when we go into a box or a tank like this, and we just say to our brain, hey, I don't want you to think about anything for the next hour. You don't have to do anything. You don't think about the family. You don't think about the kids. You don't think about work. You just go into that tank, quiet the mind, and then we can start to go into opening up the heart and ultimately tapping into higher states of consciousness and ultimately super consciousness.
And when somebody's visiting these float centers, it's sanitary, right? I know your unit is extremely sanitary because we have friends and family members that use it. But how does that work?
So there's a thorough filtration system on our tanks, for example. So after each client gets out of the tank, the float owner, facilitator will press a button on the back of the tank, and all of that salt water, every single molecule of that saltwater solution gets blasted with ozone purification, goes through UV purification, goes through a micron filter, goes back into the tank. And for starters, you can't forget that saltwater solution, it's not bath water. It's incredibly saline, over 4 times more concentrated than even the Dead Sea. So nothing can live in there anyway. And then if anything was, as an extra measure, usually we dose it with hydrogen peroxide rather than chlorine or bromine or anything like that. Just keep it food grade, food safe, and the minerals intact, all the rest of it, man.
It's incredibly clean. That's what our users say, and they're just really really impressed with that. So I want to encourage anybody who has the means or just interested in more details to go to maxvitality.co. That's co. And use the code Kwik if you decide to purchase either the salts or purchase one of their tanks for home use. This is a conversation I've been wanting to have because this is just gives you an extra advantage, right? This is something that everybody is searching for, peace of mind, and peace of mind is the high currency right now, in a world that we're overstimulated. And so it's if you're thinking about, how do I recover in a world full of the rings and the dings and the information overload and all the different distractions, is a wonderful way to kind of gift yourself, time, or find a local, spa, close by. As you mentioned, just look in your search engine and find a float spa close by, and it's readily accessible. And I'm glad, like you are getting the word out, to more people, about this, because I find that, some of my clients in Silicon Valley, some of my high performer people in the entertainment field, certainly in athletics, in sports, this is their go-to, for mental and physical recovery. But, part of the Kwik Brain podcast is we want to bring some of these high-end tools and strategies, or, even things like the magnesium salts, can make a big difference, in your life, and it's an investment that we make in our own productivity and profitability.
Definitely, man. Yeah, very well said. And glad you've been getting in there and been able to quiet the mind and surrender to the silent darkness and reap all its beautiful benefits.
That's perfect. Max, how do people stay in touch besides maxvitality.co for more information about the salts and customizing a tank for their accelerated learning and performance? How can people, social media or?
Yeah, social media is great. Either they can follow me at Max Casa, MAXXCASA, see what we're doing there, but also our business page, maxvitality.co. And I'm sure we can drop those in the show notes as well for people to check out. Yeah, really there. The website, on the website, you'll see all of the salts, all the vitality chambers. We got a bunch of them. We got enclosed ones, look more like an egg. We also have totally open ones, look more like your swim spa in the back, or a totally open hot tub, something like that, So a bunch of different styles and a bunch of different price points too. We got small, we got medium, we got large ones that are large enough to float 2 people at once, which are great for commercial centers and couples floats, etc. But yeah, man, so reach out to there, and I'm looking forward to connect with more of the Kwik universe, man.
Max, so I want to thank you so much for educating us on float therapy. I think I'm curious with our listeners, if you've ever had this experience before, make sure you post it, take a screenshot wherever you're consuming this, tag Max, tag myself, so we get to see it. And I would love to hear your stories. If you've experienced float therapy before, sensory deprivation, maybe some of the benefits that come from magnesium salts, I'll repost some of my favorites, as we often do, because you'll tag us and we get to see it. I'll actually gift, I have an extra bag of vitality salts to one person who happens to be listening this, as we often do, just as a thank you for listening to our show and sharing it. And Max, thanks again for being on our show and for setting us up, and my family up, clients up with this amazing float experience.
Oh, I appreciate you, man. Thank you for everything as well. And yeah, I hope anyone listens to this, they've been encouraged or inspired to at least go give it a shot. Again, 3 times. Don't quit after 1. Get in there and hope you guys reap some of the same benefits that I have.
I always tell people with anything, try things 3 times. 1, to kind of get the experience of it. Another, to get, kind of good at it. And 3rd one, just to see if you like it and want to continue long term. And I feel like when you get into that flow state, which we didn't get a chance to talk about, but those, for me, I feel like I lose track of time. I lose track of self also. And my performance is so much better because of it. So Max, thanks again.
My brother, I appreciate you, man. Float on, eh?
Float on. All right. Thank you, everyone, for listening. Make sure you subscribe. I'll watch the entire interview. That's the audio is always, we keep to 20 minutes because I know your time is valuable. On YouTube, we put the more extended version. Join over 1.2 million subscribers there. And until our next episode, Be limitless, everyone.